She's a recycling programs coordinator from Multifamily Dwellings at Marin Sanitary. She started her career at Recology San Mateo County and later at the Community Housing Partnership. She has served also on the NCRA board. As previously, it was the co-chair of Zero Waste Youth Convergence coming up later this week. And she will present on Multifamily Dwelling Compost Pilot, measuring how outreach tools influence participation. Give it up for Jessica.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, and it's an honor to finally speak at this event, having been here for, I think this is my 7th year. So, how outreach tools impact participation in multifamily dwellings. How does this thing work? Okay, so the background to the background. In 2014, February 2014, Marin Sanitary Service had a focus group where participants expressed interest in having outreach tools in a multifamily dwelling setting. My position and others was created out of that focus group. And then also we did a waste characterization study that was put on by Cal Recovery, and as most of us are aware, a large percentage of food scraps going to landfill, a large percentage of material going to the landfill is food scraps. And so 30% of that is we wanted to recover. And so we also wanted to support Marin County's zero waste goal of reaching 94% zero waste by 2025. And we wanted to look at how can we get stuff out of the landfill in a multifamily dwelling setting. So we wanted to develop a pilot to instead of putting the cart before the horse of expanding a program, we wanted to see how can we best serve our customers. And so we developed this study looking at the highest and the best participation rates in a compost program in a multifamily dwelling setting. And for the purpose of this, highest is most volume and most carts with material in them, and best is lowest contamination. And then also, how would these outreach tools influence future programs and expanding programs at Marin Sanitary Service for our customers? So there were 20 MFDs in the pilot. We divided those into 4 different groups, and there were five in each group. I'll go into what each group received in the next slide. We provided one 32-gallon container per 4 units, and I know this is a lot of service for a multifamily dwelling, especially if it's focused on food scraps. But we wanted to keep the math justified. So a 16-unit building in the study received 4 32-gallon carts, and a 4-unit building would receive 1. And that helped it be volumetrically proportional through the study. And then the data was collected by one driver for 6 weeks. We trained him specifically on what we needed, and I'll get to that in a couple of slides. All right, so group 1 received a lot of material, everything that's pictured in the photograph. Group 1 received a kitchen pail, door-to-door outreach by the outreach staff in Spanish or in English, brochures and other paper pamphlets, which I've brought today to show you if you're curious on what we actually passed out, and then also a cart with signage. And if someone was not home when we went to their door, we left, as the bottom left photo suggests, we left it hung on their door with all of the information. Group 2 also received door-to-door education but did not receive a kitchen pail, received the similar outreach and educational materials. Instead of saying, we've given you a compost pail, we said, this is where you can buy a compost pail, and then also the cart with the sticker on it. And then group 3 did not receive door-to-door education, but we left material on their door and then also put signage on their cart outside. One thing to note before going into group 4 is that if someone was not at home in group 2, they ended up receiving the same level of outreach as group 3. And we kept track of how many people we spoke to, and we only spoke to 23% of people in group 2. So 77% of the people in group 2 got the same level of outreach as group 3, and that's kind of important for the results of our study, as you'll see in a minute. And then group 4 was essentially our control group. We only put a cart there with a sticker on it. This is the audit form that the driver used to collect the data. This is where we generated all the results from the study, so this is a very crucial piece of information. I filled out the top portion of how many carts were on site, the customer's information, etc., and the driver filled out how many carts had material in them, what % full each cart was, whether there was food scraps or yard waste in it, and what % breakdown that was. Also, if there was any contamination, and then any notable information in the notes section below. And here's a zoom in of that same form on the last page of what the carts looked like. He would even take pictures if a cart was empty, and then I could use the visuals to compare what cart he was talking about, what contamination there was, and so like there's the contamination there, a plastic to-go container, and then this is what we used for generating the results of the study. Here's some pictures of some clean carts in the study. My favorite picture is the one in the center. I can't imagine why. We did do this in February, and so people were putting out their Christmas trees. The driver did consider that cart more than 100% full. Also, in the first week of the compost pilot, someone composted their compost bucket. I don't know if they realized it was reusable. And then some samples of contamination, a Coke can and a paper to-go cup. We don't accept paper products lined with plastic in our program, so that's also considered contamination. All right, so the results. After 6 weeks of collecting data, we generated a massive spreadsheet. And if you're interested, I will email it to you if you want to see it. Group 1 had by far the highest participation rate in terms of carts with material in them per week. So out of the number of units and number of properties in that group, there were 11 carts, and on any given week, 10 out of 11 carts had material in them. That doesn't mean they were 100% full, but they had material in them. That's a significant drop to Group 2, which only had 5 out of 9 carts every week. Group 3 and Group 4 had about 50% of their carts had material in them each week. So the kitchen pails, in this terms, really, it did impact the amount of participation that we received in the program. Now, the average cart volume, Group 1 had significantly more material in the carts in addition to having a number of carts with material in them. And by far, they had 3.5 times more material in them than Group 2, and about 2 times more material in them than Groups 3 and Group 4. And that's just focusing on the food waste for this because we really wanted to look at capturing the food waste. Contamination, though, was kind of surprising. Compost pails did not suggest that it would keep contamination low. Group 1 did have the second lowest contamination rate out of the other groups, but it was not the lowest. However, of the carts that had contamination in them, it was only about 4% contaminated overall. So it was pretty low, and that was based on volume, plastic bags, plastic to-go containers, paper products. A lot of food-soiled paper that we don't allow because of the plastic liner ended up in the compost program. And then we also, after the study was over, we conducted a survey, and we had a really high response rate. We did door hanger surveys, which is pictured here on the right. We left them on everybody's door, and it was also offered in Spanish and in English. And we came back the next day and collected the hangers. This was super effective. There were 185 units in our study, and 47 responded to the survey. So that's over 25%. And I just wanted to highlight question number 7 of would you be more likely to participate in a program if you receive a kitchen pail? And 19 people said yes, they would. 16 people who responded said that they received a kitchen pail. So I know that they were from Group 1, which was really cool. And then next steps. So we conducted this early last year. We actually expanded the compost program and it's now available to all multifamily dwellings. And we have implemented offering kitchen pails as part of that, as long as someone wants door-to-door education, face-to-face contact or presentation. In fact, I'm going to do one tomorrow night. So we're going really well, and we're also doing a second phase pilot study on what types of bags influence participation in a compost program, and maybe I'll talk about that in a couple years. So with that, thank you for your time. I know that was fast, but if you have any questions.
All right, we already have some questions. We've got one right here.
All right, Jennifer.
Jessica, are these Marin, are they picking up the cost of the pails, or is there some sort of grant to subsidize that? That's just they're doing it, there's no money.
That's a really good question. So,
Repeat the question.
okay, Jennifer asked, is Marin Sanitary Service picking up the tab for the compost pails? And yes, we are. It is built into our rates, and the city's approved it. So yes. But for the pilot, Zero Waste Marin provided the kitchen pails for the pilot study. So thank you, Zero Waste Marin. I know you're here today.
Other questions?
Over here. Okay, so Marin Sanitary Service services central Marin County. So we service San Rafael, Larkspur, Fairfax, San Anselmo, and some unincorporated areas. I'm forgetting a few right now, I'm sorry. But yeah, Central Marin.
All right, other questions? Oh,
Way in the back.
I noticed that your highest contamination rate was for people who received the paper brochure. Did you identify something wrong or missing in the brochure, or is there some other reason for that?
The question was there anything wrong with the information that we provided to Group 3? Why was the contamination rate so much higher? It's hard to explain why the contamination rate was so high. There were a few examples where 100% of the pail was recyclables, or there were a couple of cases where somebody put a full bag of recycling into the container instead of, it wasn't usually garbage.
All right. Thanks
Any
very
more?
much.
Okay,
Nice
thank you.
job. Well
Thanks.
timed.
All right, awesome.
Thank you.